welcome to not a Thursday SipScout party.
That's right. We're
It's
on
a
Friday. We're prime time tonight.
Yes, indeed. All right.
Kicking off the weekend here. Thank you for joining. We have quite a few people here. Hi, everyone. Those of you who have been here before, welcome. Zach, Jay, Michael. Those of you who are new to us, let's see. I see a few other names. Phyllis, Kathy, welcome. We are so thrilled that you're here.
Yeah, we're gonna go on a little vacation today with you today and talk about rum and make a delicious cocktail. Suzanne thought this would be an appropriate way to invite you to the weekend, and I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. The dog days of summer, right? We're in the dog days of summer, the home stretch. And we live in Arizona, for those of you who don't know. So if you think you're in the dog days of summer, we're really in the dog days of summer. Although I have to say, growing up in Massachusetts, humidity is worse.
Yeah, that's not nothing.
Then I would rather be in 105-degree dry heat than in 85-degree humidity.
But now that we're in monsoon season here in Arizona, it's also humid.
Yeah. All right, I can't wear the hat for the whole show. I'm sorry, I can't do it. It was just to welcome everyone. I'm gonna get too hot. All right, let's get this started here. So for those of you who are new, and for those of you who've been here before, it's always nice to have a little reminder of how we roll. I'm Suzanne. I'm the founder of the Crafty Cask, where we are all about celebrating and supporting craft alcohol maker, like today with Rum.
Yes. And my name is Evan. I'm a certified sommelier, certified cider professional, spirits enthusiast, and your mixologist for the day.
He is your boozy expert. He knows more about booze, and I know quite a bit about booze myself these days too, than anyone I know. And he also has his WSET3 certification, which is a spirits and wine certification. So he knows lots about spirits, rum included. So we will be your hosts for this evening. We're excited to have you here. The way we're going to do this is the first, 45 minutes or so, hour, depending on how much information we have to share and
how many questions you have for us.
Yeah, please use the chat as you say that. Make sure to use the chat. And, right now, if you want to throw in the chat where you're calling from, and if it's feeling like the dog days of summer for you, or if you have any fun vacation plans coming up or just got back from a fun vacation. Yeah, absolutely. Throw them in the chat so everyone can get to know each other a little bit, see who's here. But we're going to start off in this webinar format where we will be doing the tasting, teaching you a little bit about rum, getting you excited about, rum, and then we'll be making a cocktail, a delicious cocktail, one of my favorites for tropical vacations in summer. And so Evan will walk you through how to make that. And then from there, we'll open it up and we'll let people turn on their cameras, turn on their webinars.
Show us your pretty cocktail.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of see everyone's faces and get to kind of do it happy hour style after that. Now that we have a little booze in us, we get to socialize and hang out. Looks like Jay he's in the cold and he's in a hoodie. Phyllis is from Durham, North Carolina, so it's probably a little humid there, I would imagine.
That's true.
Yeah, I really love Durham. I love that whole area. Great, awesome. So let's get started here, shall we? If you have your SipScout kit, you have the SipScout kit to pick up the show. If you have a SipScout kit, if you're one of our members, thank you for being a member. I hope you enjoyed this kit that you got this month. So grab your kit, get your 3 smaller bottles of rum out, and we're going to start with our rum tasting and talk a little bit about how rum is made, the history of rum, and taste these delicious rums. So let's get these poured into our glasses. We'll start with the blue label, and then we will, did we say we'll do the gunpowder proof second? I think that's what we're going to do, and then we'll do the aged 15 years last. So that's the order that we'll be tasting in. And if you don't have the kit and you're sipping on a different rum, go ahead and throw it in the chat and let us know what you're sipping on.
Yeah, I'm curious what other rums you are fans of out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an exciting growing category. Obviously, it's been around for a very long time. But as far as the interest in something that can be sipped on the way that many people have been enjoying bourbon for the last, feels like 20 years now that bourbon's been popular.
Yeah, for sure. And then as we're going through here a little bit, Jay's sipping on Hampton rum. Excellent.
Cool.
So I know Jay has the kit as well. So we'll have to do a little comparison over there. And as we're going through, we're also going to, because we like to try to keep this interactive, we'll be throwing some polls up as we go along. Just to get your juices flowing about rum. So as we talk about this one, where the first sugarcane based spirit was distilled, you can go ahead and put your guesses in there. But rum is a sugarcane based spirit.
That
So
is
that
the
is,
distinguishing or one of the.
yeah, one of the distinguishing factors, whereas whiskey is made from grain, brandy is made from fruit.
Vodka is made from anything that has a
Anything.
fermentable sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. Sake is made from rice,
Mhm.
beer is made from grain, right? So that's the source material is what defines categories very often, or at least one of the components. And so rum does have to be made from sugar cane. But any form of sugar cane.
Yeah,
So it could be sugar cane, fresh sugar cane juice, sugar cane syrup, sugar that's made from cane.
Does it have to be sugar made from cane?
It does. So
That's a
yeah,
good
that's an
point.
often people get a little confused about this. So a lot of there's beet sugar is
Mhm.
very common. So if something was distilled from beet sugar, that would not be considered rum. It does have to be sugarcane. Let's see, we have some guesses here. Barbados, good guess, good guess. Yeah, do most of you, I think most of us think of when we're thinking about rum, we think of the Caribbean, right? We're thinking about the, British Virgin Islands and things of that nature. And that's because that's where a lot of the rum comes from. And
Sure.
that is where a lot of the history of rum began. But surprisingly, the first sugarcane based spirit distilled was in Brazil, and it was actually cachaça. So it was not rum. And it was, back in, I'm trying to remember, I think 1500 was the first distilled. And so cachaça is different than rum. It's a little bit more closely aligned to agricole rum. And so an agricole rum is made from fresh sugarcane.
And then cachaça can be made from anything that's sugarcane based, but is.
I believe it's also fresh sugarcane.
Is it single distillation?
Yeah, so
That's
it
the
is also fresh sugarcane is required, I believe. So it can't be made from molasses or anything like that. But it can only be distilled once, whereas rum can be distilled multiple times to get out kind of more impurities and things of that nature. So
Which is why if you've ever had cachaça, it does have a little bit more of like a
raw,
unrefined, raw, maybe almost even unclean character to it.
But agricole rum often does as well. And so agricole rum, I wanted to talk about that momentarily because that is like, in my mind, the purest form of rum almost.
Yeah, given that it's sugar.
Right, because
cane instead of molasses.
Right, if you're thinking that anything rum can be made of has to start with sugar cane, agricole rum is actually made from the sugar cane itself. So they actually take the sugar cane, they put it directly through kind of wood chippers, essentially juicers, these big, and they have to do this in the field. And the reason they have to do it in the field is because sugarcane is very, I don't know what the right word is for it, unstable or.
Yeah, it just degrades quickly.
Yeah, it degrades very quickly. And so as soon as you chop it down, essentially, you start to lose some of the sucrose that's in it. And I think there's some stat that says within 24 hours of cutting down sugarcane, 3% of the sucrose is gone immediately. Wow. And so you either have to refine it and turn it into something very quickly, or you have to, right, like sugar, like molasses, something like a byproduct of that, or you have to really put it in that chipper right in the field, bring it straight in, distill it or ferment it and distill it right away. And so really you can only get agricole rum where sugarcane is grown. And so that is where most agricole rums are coming from the British Virgin Islands and the French. And actually, I think mostly the French. Yeah. I think the French colonized Caribbean is actually where most of the agricole rums come from.
That's my recollection as well, yeah.
So, side note on agricole, but now let's get into.
Let's have a sip of our first rum. This is the Pusser's Blue label. And
I'm just going to cheers to everyone.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you for joining. Happy Friday.
So one of the things that kind of distinguishes Pusser's and other, I guess, English style rums is this kind of really bold depth of character and spiciness that you find. And these are made from molasses. Suzanne was talking about agricole and that kind of purity that you find. I feel like those often exhibit a lot more kind of grassy and herbaceous and like olive notes.
They are my favorite for daiquiris. Instead of just using a white rum, and we can talk about the difference between white rum and agricole later. But an agricole rum and a daiquiri is really grassy and herbaceous.
And I think, right off the bat, that spice characters, that those like low earthy notes, you really can kind of straight smell the molasses that this is, the source material is from. And Phyllis makes a great point. This is coming originally from the Demerara Valley I always pronounce this wrong, Guyana. Guyana,
Guyana, I believe.
Guyana.
Mhm.
That has been known for sugar production for years and years and years. At one point, there were over 300 sugarcane estates in the Demerara Valley, and each one of them had a distillery associated with it. That's where Pusser's got its start, and it's been kind of moved and reincorporated and kind of recreated over the years into the British Virgin Islands and even in North Carolina, as Phyllis, you might very well know. I believe that's the US headquarters. And the sugar quality that you find here is distinguishable enough that they named a sugar after it. There's, turbinado sugar, and Demerara is another sugar that you can find that is actually named and labeled as such. And I think this really just shines through in this first blue label.
Yeah, and the blue label is really their flagship. This
Yeah.
is the OG that's been kind of around forever. And Pusser's is a very, very old, very traditional brand. And so this is kind of where you want to start with them to really get to know what they're all about.
Yeah. And the historical components and the traditional components of Pusser's are really quite fascinating. They had a lot of close ties to the British Royal Navy. Want to make sure I'm not giving away anything in the polls that are coming up.
You certainly will, but that's okay. Just these people are paying attention. That's all right.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point.
yeah. Yeah, and so Pusser's is considered the British Royal Navy's rum. Now, not anymore to this day, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But they started, gosh, I want to say back in the 1600s, is when they really started. So the British Royal Navy, they would give rations at the time of beer to their navy. And so everyone would get a ration of beer. And after a while, they started to learn that beer went bad on these long voyages. It did not hold very well, and then, the discovery of hops and that kind of helped that situation, but that wasn't what was going on quite yet. So then they started to kind of have some brandy on the ships. That was kind of common, but then the French and the British had some issues, right? They didn't,
the brandy wasn't available.
they didn't want to have French products on their British Royal Navy ships. The Dutch had gin, but they also had some issues with the Dutch back then, so there was all this colonization and all of these great big countries who were kind of fighting over the world. And so they really
Portugal had port.
Right, exactly. So they were trying these different things, and they really wanted their sailors to have a ration every day, essentially, is the idea of it. And, if you were thinking about what it was like to be a sailor back then versus what it might be like to be a sailor now, not to say if there's any sailors here that it's easy to be a sailor now, but, the labor intensive of I don't even know what the right words are for cannons and putting the cannons in the cannon.
Trimming the sails and
Yeah.
tugging on lines and tossing the anchor in,
Right.
pull the anchor back up.
Right, there were no buttons to bring the
grunt
anchor
work.
in, right? It was really heavy duty, and the way that they fought battles back then too were really eye to eye, right? You're right in each other's face. And so there was this feeling that, you needed a little bit of liquid courage part of it, and also a little bit of relief after a hard day work.
Sure.
So it was decreed by the Royal Navy that every sailor gets a ration of alcohol every day. And so when they started discovering kind of the Caribbean area and all of that, and discovering sugarcane and how that was all going, rum became the choice, really. And so everyone got a daily ration of rum, starting in the 1600s, a daily ration of rum for 300 years.
One of the
This went
longest
on.
traditions in any kind of quote unquote modern establishment.
Absolutely.
Institution.
Yeah. And Pusser's was that rum,
Essentially.
and was the entire time that this was going on. So they basically had a monopoly on the British Royal Navy and the rum. And one of the reasons they're called Pussers is, this better than I do, is because
The purser, exactly. So the purser is the officer on board that's in charge of accounts, and they make sure that everything that they need to put on the boat when they're at dock, it gets on the boat, and everything has to gets taken off, and then everybody, who has a responsibility does it, and then they get their ration, and all of that stuff is taken care of by the purser. And purser is what kind of evolved into Pusser over the years. So the Pusser's rum was the top of whiskey, or I'm sorry, the top of rum that you would get each day as a jolly Jack Tar on a sail in the high seas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, the nose on this blue label, and it's kind of fun to think of that history, isn't it? That this is what the sailors were drinking back in the 1700s,
Mhm.
like a very, very, and probably isn't exactly the same, but very similar to this, because they do still say that they follow the same recipe that they followed way back then,
Right.
and that it's still aged a minimum of 3 years. It's still made in wooden pot
What does it
stills.
say? The original Admiralty rum.
And the admiral had specifications for what he would allow for their rum, and it still made those specifications today. So it's a little sip of history in a
Sure is.
glass,
Yeah.
that helped discover this world and definitely has some dark sides to it.
Yep.
But it does have some like earthy, dirty is the wrong word, because I mean, it's not, it's like kind of what I'm thinking, but it's like that moldy, dirty, like deliciousness to it.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing to say, I know.
And I feel like in no small part it's due to, one of the unique features of Puster's rum and the essentially the recipe that the Admiral had in place for the production of rum for the sailors, which is that this is distilled in wooden pots, which is very uncommon. It's
Very
rare.
uncommon. I mean, we've been to a million distilleries, we talked to a lot of distillers, and even when we were, preparing to put together this kit, we were like, wooden pot stills. I can't even imagine like what that looks like and what that like, because you're thinking like barrels are made out of wood, that's very common, but for where it's actually being made to be made out of wood.
Yeah.
And so one of the things they attribute their depth of flavor to in this versus other rums, and that little bit of like kind of funkiness that's going on in there, is that for centuries,
Yeah.
centuries,
For
literally,
200. They didn't have
this
steel
wood
barrels
has
and
been distilling and making,
Stocking.
fermenting.
congeners and esters and things like that in and out. Yeah,
And so those layers of flavor over the years, just
and the wood too is kind of unique. I believe it's a South American hardwood, which would make sense, called Greenheart. And some of these staves have been around and been refurbished and refinished for like 100+ years, maybe even more, simply because they wanted to keep the same characteristics going again and again and again with each new distillation. Part of the reason that this distillation method is incredibly uncommon is, well, by contrast, a continuous column still, which is another way of distilling, has something in the neighborhood of like a 99-98% efficiency, which means that you're not losing product that you don't intend to lose. You'll make the cuts and discard the hearts, discard the heads and the tails and keep the hearts. But with a wooden pot distillation, simply by virtue of the fact that it's going into a pot that has to be opened, and then the pot itself is not fully sealing off from the heat that's being produced, which is causing more and more of evaporation, you're going to get maybe a 60% efficiency with something like a wooden pot still.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I think
the-
they say, their fermentation.
the loss leader.
Well, and they say like their fermentation is not taking place in days or their distillation, sorry, is not taking place in hours. It's taking place in days and weeks,
Mhm.
right? So it is a much slower kind of artful process. What do you guys think of this first one, those of you who are sipping on it? I can't wait till like when we can all talk when we get on happy hour style, but like if you haven't really drank rum straight before, because a lot of people haven't, a lot of people think of rum and they think of, these super fruity drinks and by the pool and rum and cokes, and that's like all that rum means to them. And sipping rum straight for the first time, really, I remember very viscerally when I did it, and it was very like, wait, oh my gosh, why haven't I been sipping on this straight all along? So yeah, I'm fascinated to hear what everyone's thinking here. You want to give the answers to our poll there?
Sure. Guess what? You guys are all right.
Because none of you voted for the wrong answer there. So originates from a Caribbean island or South America. That does not have to be true. All three of the others do have to be true though. So this was a multiple choice. So if anyone guessed all three, then you're the champion.
Sneaky, tricky question.
Yeah.
Can
but
anybody
all three.
think of a rum that is a rum that originates somewhere other than the Caribbean or South America? This is kind of a fun lead into another component of rum's history. So, while many people attribute the beginning of the Revolutionary War to a tax on tea. A lot of historians would contend that in fact it was a tax on molasses, which was used to make rum here in the 13 original colonies.
Yeah.
And Suzanne loves this story. She's from Massachusetts. And what was the number? Like some outrageous number of rum distilleries?
That is a poll. So I'm
Oh,
not gonna
okay.
answer, but it is, it's crazy. Like if you think about, you know, back in the day, New England was the heart of rum making in this country.
Yeah.
And it was part of our founding, like it was before whiskey. Before we were making whiskey in this country, they were making rum. And they were bringing molasses in from the Caribbean islands as part of, you know, the slave trade route. And it became very big in New England, and it's really fun. So if any of you, Zach, I know you're out in this neck of the woods, there is a big resurgence in New England right now of craft rum. Actually, I think we have at least one. We can break through all of them. But Mad River, like, look at this, you guys. All of our rum bottles are like completely the dregs.
That was from New Mexico. That was from Mexico. That was New Mexico, Mexico, New England,
Hawaii. Yep. Florida we have. But so Mad River is up in Vermont and they make amazing one, but there's a lot of distilleries that are really trying to get back to the roots of rum. Yes, back the Great Molasses Flood. It's in there somewhere, but the Great Molasses Flood in Boston, that is a really fun, crazy story. It was something like,
yeah, the Boston Tea Party is not even all that crazy. Like they're mad and they throw some tea in the bay, but like the molasses.
Well, the molasses flood was like a mistake. That wasn't related to the revolution.
No, I know, but
yeah.
Stories of Boston in that time period. How did I not ever learn that?
Yeah. But basically the England started to tax molasses. They said, you know, anything coming from a French colonized island, we're going to place an import tax on it because we don't want the colonies buying stuff from France. We want the colonies buying stuff from us. And you know, that did not go over super well.
Nope.
That's actually where the start of the no taxation without representation that we all learned in grade school came from. They all talk about the Boston Tea Party. Maybe, I don't know, maybe because they don't want to be talking to kids about rum and alcohol. Maybe that's why this part gets left out of our history lessons. But it really did start with rum before the Boston Tea Party, that the natives were getting restless. I guess not the natives, but
the invaders.
Yeah, the invaders were getting restless.
Sidebar, kind of a funny thing that I've always been tickled by. If you've ever been to DC, you might know that DC license plates bear the term taxation without representation right there on every single license plate. I think that's just hilarious. They don't get to vote. They don't have senators. They don't have representatives.
Yeah. All right. Zach says he does not have the vocab to describe it. His girlfriend says it's aggressive. If this is drinking a little aggressive to you, and this goes with any spirit, if anything is drinking, we tend to call it hot, where it feels like the alcohol punch is overtaking the flavors, add a drop or two of water to it. And we actually normally have a dropper like that we don't have with us. But we usually do a dropper, and yeah, you could just do what Evan just did. And you don't want to put a lot in because you can always add more, but you can't take it out. But that really starts to kind of dilute it a little bit, but you just want to dilute it a little bit at a time because it can get to a certain point where it will start drinking more like water with a little bit of rum in it rather than a rum with a little bit of water in it.
It'll also help to break the surface tension right here so that the aromas can kind of separate a little bit more and you'll get a broader spectrum and maybe be able to pull out some of the impressions a little bit more readily.
Yeah, if you're ever like, I always think of it as if I'm ever having a hard time finding the aromas, finding the flavors, and I'm just like, I'm drinking alcohol, that's when you want to add a little water or an ice cube. Our suggestion, if you want to add an ice cube, because some people, the temperature of it too, some people really like it to be a little bit cooler to enjoy it. But what we would suggest with an ice cube is adding an ice cube in, giving it a swirl, and then fishing that ice cube out. Don't leave the whole ice cube in there to fully melt. Because that will give you that little bit of water and cooling temperature, but it won't dilute it.
Yeah, after doing a couple of drops, I do feel like that's kind of expanded a little bit more, and allowing me to pick out a few more things. For some reason, can't figure it out, but I think I'm smelling some banana
because we're wearing bananas. I do smell a little banana in it. It's almost like rotten banana though. It's almost
I
like,
agree. Yeah, it's like banana peel that you left in
Yeah.
the car.
yeah. I also get a tiny bit of olive
Okay.
and definitely brown sugar.
Like
Definitely
black olive or like
yeah,
green olive?
no, like black olive.
Uh-huh.
And definitely brown sugar and like caramelized banana, maybe a little bit. Delicious.
Yum, yum.
We go on to our
Yeah,
our second one.
Let's move on to the gunpowder proof. That's what we're going to drink next. And as the name suggests, this one will also probably taste and hit a little hot. Although on the nose, it doesn't
No,
punch me
doesn't seem like it.
right in the nose as much as
Well, Evan's getting acquainted with our second tasting here. 1655 is when the British Royal Navy's daily ration of beer was replaced with rum. That was a damn long time ago.
yeah, long time.
Crazy to think of that. So yeah, back in 1655 is when rum became the official daily ration.
When was Plymouth Rock, Massachusetts, sir? What's it, Massachusetts, sir? Massachusetts?
Mouthful.
Mouthful, that's right.
I mean, that's just what we thought. Actually, I mean, is there anything else to call us other than mouthfuls? I don't know. I actually don't know what the proper name is to call someone from Massachusetts. I take pride in my mouthfulness. So I'm not offended
I
by
like
it.
Massachusetts.
I'm not sure when Plymouth Rock, I mean, we all
I
know,
think it's around then,
well,
right?
we all know 1492 Columbus sailed the
Right.
ocean blue, but I'm not sure what
And
the,
the first.
I'm a horrible Massachusetts or whatever we're calling me. I don't know that. That was a big field trip when we were kids. We'd all go to Plymouth Rock near Thanksgiving.
So, yeah, this definitely has a lot of the same heavy aromas, and I think that they're even accentuated more so because this is high proof. And I don't know if you can read that. I know the print is kind of small, but this is 54.5 ABV as opposed to, I believe, 42 for the blue label, which, I mean, it packs a lot more punch, and the addition of like that higher proof in the alcohol tends to lend to a higher perception of sweetness as well as spice. So both of those things should be more pronounced in this. And it follows through in droves. There's pepper, there's a lot of baking spices, and there's plenty of those sweet sugars, sugary characteristics.
Yeah,
not
Phyllis is
surprising.
saying brown sugar, caramel, molasses.
Phyllis, do you also get some of those spice characteristics that are hitting on the side of your palate? I feel like that really is a really fun kind of combination with the spice and the sweetness. So the gunpowder proof rum was something that was developed kind of as a dismissal of the claims that the rations, the top of rum that were being issued to soldiers were being watered down. You know, when they moved from beer to rum, they definitely noticed the impact that the high proof product had on the characteristics and the behavior of the sailors. Many of them would take their half pint and just throw the whole thing right down, which led to death in some cases, but also belligerence and antics and tomfoolery, shenanigans, all of those things. And as a result, there was certainly probably many instances where the captain of the ship would decide, hey, we're not going to give them like the straight foolproof stuff. Let's cut it a little bit.
Boys can't handle that.
They can't handle their straight booze. And the sailors grew suspicious over time. And so one of the ways that they were able to prove to these sailors that they were in fact getting the full strength stuff was at a certain proof. Essentially, when the rum is flammable on its own, it won't prevent the ignition of gunpowder, and hence the term gunpowder proof. And so a splash of watered down rum on a little pile of gunpowder, when you would go to ignite it, it wouldn't ignite. And so the the high strength stuff would still allow the gunpowder to ignite, indicating to the sailors that it was in fact what they expected at the full proof. It's actually kind of the origin of the term proof. It was proof that this is actually spirit.
Right.
As a way to verify something, in this case, prior to the hydrometer and during the days of like prohibition here in the United States, when the TTB wasn't testing the moonshine that you were making out in the shed.
Yeah.
That was one of the ways that you could prove it to your neighbor who might want to buy some of your hooch, that it was in fact the real deal. Yeah, it's still
Quite
lingering. Boy.
Yeah, it's quite delicious. You know the jet pilot cocktail? Phyllis is saying this would be perfect for the jet pilot cocktail, or maybe the,
I know the jet plane.
uh-huh.
Is the jet pilot essentially rum in place of whiskey in the jet plane?
No, it looks like there's 3 different rums in it. I just looked it up because I wasn't familiar with it either. It's overproof Jamaican rum, Demerara rum, gold rum, grapefruit juice, lime juice, cinnamon syrup, falernum, absinthe, Angostura bitters, and a cherry as a garnish. There's a lot going on in that cocktail. I'm curious about this.
Demerara, gold.
Phyllis, is this a cocktail that you enjoy? Recommended? I haven't had it.
Yeah.
It also said it's a spin on a test pilot cocktail.
I was thinking jet plane, jet
Right.
pilot, test,
Right.
but pilot test, jet pilot. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay, cool.
We're gonna have to play around with that
Yeah,
later, and
good. I don't know if we have any falernum. I don't think we do.
we can get some.
Yeah, we can.
Originated at the Luau in 1950. Yeah, it sounds like one will do.
Yeah,
It
maybe
certainly
half
does.
of one.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
could share it.
Perfect. Love it. Historically common nickname for rum, rumbullion, kill devil, and rumbushkin are all historically common names for rum. And actually what they called rum before they called it rum, it was kind of shortened just to rum at older time. Red rum is the only red herring in there.
Yep, the red herring, red rum. Red rum,
Yeah.
red rum.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, but rum was really, I actually wanted to, let's see if I can find it. I just wanted to, this is a fabulous book. If you're curious about rum at all, it's Rum Curious.
Rum Curious.
book. Yeah, it's fabulous. And I just wanted to read the opening, the foreword, because it's really, it's just, so Martin Kate, who is one of the founder and owners of Smuggler's Cove in San Francisco, which is an amazing rum bar. If you're ever in San Francisco, God, they have what, like 500 rums or something? They have 3 different bars across 3 different floors. They have a rum club, actually, where if you try, I think it's every rum they
I
have.
believe you're right.
If you try every rum they have and not in a certain period of time or anything like that.
And actually probably not allowed to be
Right,
in
'cause it's
too short of a
500.
period. Let's do it all tonight.
But if you do that and they have a way to keep track, they actually take you on a trip to like one of the rum making regions or islands. And everyone who's done that in the last year gets to go on a trip. I think you get like a jacket that has like the name of their club on it.
That was the Riddler.
The jacket was the Riddler.
Yeah, and I was like, wait, you get to go on a trip to the Caribbean if you do it here? And
Yeah.
at this place, you only get a jacket?
Yeah. So the foreword to this is by the owner of this bar, which is amazing. But it says, it's hard to underestimate the importance of rum. Indeed, there has scarcely been a moment in the last 3 centuries when rum hasn't been at the center of commerce, nation building, wars at sea, or wars in court. No other spirit can tell so many tales of triumph and tragedy on its long journey alongside the development of the New World. It has transformed itself to match regional tastes, consumer demand, and commercial pressures. Often it has soared, at times it has fallen. It has enslaved and liberated. It has been a hero, a villain, and a scapegoat. But the story of rum goes on. Like it gives me goosebumps because it's just so many people, when we're drinking, we're just drinking for effect. And we're like, I've had a hard day. I want to have a drink and get drunk. But like, if you stop to think a little bit about where this comes from and everything it's been a part of in our history. And, and a lot of spirits have these histories. Tequila is another great example of like a lot of historical pieces to it. But it really just, for me, for us, and this is why I founded the Crafty Cask, just transports you while you're drinking, makes you have an appreciation, makes you slow down and savor it a little bit more, makes you feel more connected to other people in the world. And I just feel like rum is like the darling child of that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really,
there are few things out there that are associated with as much life and death as rum. I mean, maybe like the Gutenberg press.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and to talk a little bit about the dark history of rum, it was very, very closely intricated with the slave trade.
Yeah.
Very much so. And one of the reasons for that is sugarcane is very water intensive to grow, but it's also very labor intensive to grow and harvest, like very labor intensive. And while as these explorers were discovering these Caribbean islands, they saw this stuff was growing and the water intensity was there. There's plenty of water in Caribbean islands. They had the water to grow it. They did not have the labor to really grow it and harvest it and turn it into a commercial kind of trading. And at the time, sugar was as valuable as spices. So the spice trade, right? Sugar was as valuable as that. And so it was opportunistic for these explorers to figure out how to get more sugar, how to plant more sugarcane, how to get more out of this. And as they did this, and they realized how much labor they needed, the slaves who were already on their ships was an obvious answer. And then starting to bring more slaves over just to work the sugarcane fields. And then it became even more deeply kind of in this because the byproduct of making sugar was molasses. And what happened, and really kind of part of where, the rum popularity came from is some molasses was sitting on the side, someone added a little water to it, some native yeast from the air got into it, it fermented, and they started to distill it. Someone smartly came over and said, let's kind of turn this into, and then this was, at the beginning, it was actually kind of a slave alcohol. Like it was cheap. It was a byproduct of sugar. The explorers and the colonists weren't really interested in it because that's not what they were selling. And so the slaves started to kind of make this for themselves. And then all of a sudden the slave traders wanted some. And then all of a sudden the colonists wanted some. And now all of a sudden you needed more slaves to make this, but the slaves also had demand for it. And so it was this really vicious cycle of, supporting a horrific part of our history where rum really came from. And that's really how it got up into New England as well, as, New England was a very key part of the slave trade. And as, things were coming up there and they'd get some rum, they'd bring rum up and they'd sell rum to the New Englanders. And the New Englanders very quickly realized like, hey, why are we buying rum from them? Why don't we buy molasses from them? They have all this molasses, like, can we buy the molasses for cheap, bring it up here and we'll distill it ourselves. And so that's really how rum became so prominent in New England as well. So it does have a dark and stormy history. Dark and stormy is also a delicious cocktail that you can make with rum.
It's sad that there's so many connections like that too.
Yeah. But it is a beautiful drink that we are very grateful is here for us to enjoy. And
yeah, and raising a glass to
the hardships that helped create this. Yeah.
So moving on to our last spirit, this is the aged 15-year Buster's rum. And by contrast to aged spirits in more northerly latitudes like bourbon in Kentucky or Scotch in Scotland, when you're aging spirits in a tropical climate, the intense heat that you really don't get much of an abatement from accelerates this process tremendously. The blue label is simply aged for, I think, 3 years. And the development of flavor in this, I think you'll all agree, is pretty remarkable.
And they do say that in because it's so humid and it's so hot in the regions where they're making rum and aging rum, that like a 3-year rum is kind of equivalent to maybe like a 5 or 6 year aged whiskey.
Right.
That the aging process is faster. Right.
This 15-year, by extension, is like a 30-year-old Scotch, perhaps.
I think Forbes magazine or Forbes actually called this the single malt of rums.
Okay. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And the other reason why I think these have such a depth of flavor is those wooden pot stills, versus ones that are being made in column stills that don't have that advantage. So for a younger rum, it still really drinks well beyond its weight.
Yeah, that's like the best of both worlds. You've got the sweetness and the spice and the intensity, but you've also got a lot of roundness because it's not as high proof as the gunpowder.
Mhm. For this, what are you tasting? What are you smelling?
Dried apricot,
Oh,
coffee. There's almost like I have that back.
yeah, I'm still smelling it. I haven't tasted it yet. You'll have to remember, Evan's a trained sommelier, so he has a palate, and sometimes we'll be sitting there having some wine, and I'm like, have you tasted this yet? It's been like 20 minutes, and so, but it's fun to hear him, what he's smelling, what he's tasting, and just because he's a trained sommelier does not mean he's right. Sorry, honey.
No, it's fine.
But it just means that he has more practice identifying things like this, and it's really fun, actually, once he says something, to just go see if you can find it. And you might not be able to, and part of the reason you might not be able to find it is because you're not familiar with it, right? Like if you don't eat dried apricots, you're not going to find dried apricots in here. But it can be a fun challenge, and that's actually one of the ways that my palate has improved over the years that I've known him. Is I listen to what he's saying, and then I go challenge my brain to be like, can you find that? Can you identify that? And then the next time I do it myself, when he's not around, all of a sudden I can find some of those things. So it's really fun to hear what he's doing.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the same notes that we've been discussing in the first two are present here. It's just there's a measure of integration that I'm finding that is not surprising given the amount of time it's aged. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that you age a spirit is the flavor profiles become less disjointed and allow for a smoother, rounder kind of experience, which by contrast also makes it more difficult to pick out the individual flavors.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it looks like Jen agrees. This is the first one that's not too
Glad
aggressive.
you like this
and
one.
Yeah, and it's much smoother. For me, it almost like falls a little flat in comparison to these two,
Okay.
just because it is so well integrated and it is so smooth. I like a little bit of like the prominence of
Stands
some
out.
of the
Right.
flavor profiles and aromas in the first two. But it is very, very nice. Oh, Phyllis gets oak and spice and vanilla. A lot of that is from the barrel aging. That's great. Yep. And then orange zest. Nice. Let me see if I can find that.
Yeah, I can kind of see that oiliness.
I do get a little like citrusy. I can see where you're going with that. That's really fun. And that's a really fun thing to do too. Like when you're tasting spirit, whenever you're going to make a cocktail, if you haven't tasted the spirit on its own before you make the cocktail, always taste the spirit first, because that right there, finding like, oh, there's a little orange zestiness in it, can inspire you to garnish it differently, to maybe use a different like liqueur with it than you were planning on using. It's just like cooking. You wouldn't cook with things you didn't know what they tasted like. Same thing goes for spirits. So it's really important to kind of do that. What does make it rum is a Navy rum. How did we do here? Yes, it is not any rum that is provided by the Navy. Good job. No one picks that one. It is actually the technical definition, at least according to Pusser's Rum, is that it's a rum that is distilled in wooden pot still. That is the designation there. However, I have read in other places that being at least 57% proof makes it one. I don't know if that's true because this isn't 57% proof.
And I do feel like you'll also find rums that are Navy style rum. And so that's one of the things that might delineate whether it's actually distilled in a wooden pot still.
Right, a Navy rum versus a Navy style rum.
Right, yeah.
And then you also see Navy strength rum. It's something you see on bottles sometimes.
Right.
And that's usually really just talking about the fruit. And you find Navy strength gin too, I believe, sometimes. Yeah, I think Spirit works next one. And the rum that's made to Admiral specifications, Pusser's Rum was made to the Admiral specifications. Since the Admiral does not specify anything anymore, that is no longer part of it. But yeah.
Phyllis, is 15 a blended rum? I believe that it is.
I believe all of Swiffer's rums are blended rums. I actually think they have 5 different rum stills, essentially making
Mhm.
rums, and they're all blended rums. Yeah,
And yeah, they have stills in Guyana, in BVI, and perhaps also even in North Carolina. Not sure if they had stills in North Carolina.
why do you think so? Oh, that's where they're headquartered,
That's
right?
where their US
like the
headquarters
US
are.
headquarters are. I don't think they do. I think all of the rum is made and distilled in
Okay.
the Caribbean. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. These are delicious.
Yeah, I do agree though that there's a challenge about really appreciating something that has this kind of polish and finish to it.
Yeah.
Because while it's a little bit more quaffable, maybe there's not quite as much curiosity inspiring components.
Sure. I'm just gonna say something, and I totally lost my train of thought. What did you start saying in the beginning? Helen smelling something.
With polish.
I don't remember. I don't know.
uh,
It was when I was gonna talk a little bit about our tasting techniques, one of our tasting techniques, I think I was gonna mention. Yeah. Should we make our cocktail?
think so.
Is it cocktail making
I think
time?
so.
So if for those of you who do not have the kit where you got everything that you needed to kind of make this, if you want to play along and you happen to have these ingredients at home, I know I emailed it out earlier as well, and it was on our event page and things of that nature, but you need pineapple juice, you need coconut cream, which is different than coconut milk, although you could probably use coconut milk if that's what you have at home. Maybe I just wouldn't stir the coconut milk and just take a little bit of that
Creaminess.
like top part that, you know, coagulates. So coconut cream, pineapple juice, orange juice, and rum and nutmeg. And if you have some cocktail cherries, that would be great too, or a slice of pineapple, but that's kind of everything you need to do this.
If you have your kit, grab your coconut cream and start shaking it right now, because
shake
you're gonna want to do this
Shake it up.
for a little bit. And then you'll also need a can opener,
Or one of those,
still a can
I
opener,
always
but
call them high C, the high C thing.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, they would always, my mom would puncture the high C. What does it mean when someone says splice the main brace? It actually means all of these things. Today, it means let's have a drink. So if someone says today, probably in England, I would imagine, probably not going to hear this in the States. But if someone says to you, hey, splice the main brace, that means like, let's go get a drink. But it technically means in seafaring terms to trim the largest and heaviest sail on the ship. But then the people who were doing that in those days were given a double issue of rum for a job well done because they had a very hard job. So you would say, you know, slice the brace and they'd get two rations of rum.
all right. So first off, we are gonna squeeze some orange in here. I'm just looking for an ounce of this. My citrus press does not quite fit a full half of an orange. So I'm gonna just gently do this by hand. If you've got a fork handy, sometimes that'll be a helpful way to
Yeah, you can just
squeeze
squeeze the
some
fork
extra
in it
juice
and kind
in
of
there.
squeeze it out. I guess you could quarter the orange to put it in the
Yeah.
breath, but
Actually, you know what?
Let
If
me
you
get
mind
the
grabbing that, I'm
press.
just gonna quarter this because this is slow going.
hand squeeze is not working. for you?
Hand squeeze is a little slow going. Well, I'm trying to be too precise and not make a mess and just get it all right in the shot glass here. Why, thank you.
Mhm.
Didn't give me nearly as much juice as I wanted.
So I always call it, so the Painkiller cocktail is an interesting cocktail. It's a trademarked cocktail. There aren't very many of these in the world. There are a few. And so Swiffer's Rum has actually trademarked this cocktail. And what that means is if you are making money off of this cocktail, if you have it on a bar restaurant or a restaurant menu, a bar menu, anywhere like that, it has to be made with Swiffer's Rum. You cannot make it with any other rum. They can come and sue you and
Take your house.
Yeah. If you're making a painkiller at home, of course, you can make it with whatever rum you want. But it is a Pusser's rum cocktail. And I didn't know that when I first started drinking them. I just started, seeing them on menus and ordering them out. And I've been referring to it for a very long time as like the grown-up pina colada. And the reason I feel that way is not because I think kids should drink pina coladas. But I feel like, when you're in college and in your 20s, you're not worrying about things like calories or, sweetness or anything like that. And so I would drink pina coladas all the time, and I would just be this big frozen, like decadent dessert, essentially,
Yeah.
And as I got older, I really wanted pina coladas, but I couldn't, I'd have one, and maybe I wanted more than that. And it just felt like a dessert. It felt very heavy. It felt very like a lot. And so what I love about the Painkiller is it's kind of just like a thinner, lighter, like less caloric, and it's funny that I'm saying that because Evan knows I don't diet. I'm not one of those people. I am very comfortable eating things and drinking things that I want to. But, I like to have a couple of drinks when I'm sitting by the pool, and I can have a couple of Painkillers. I can't have a couple of pina coladas. They just like fill my belly and make me feel gross after a while because there's so much kind of thickness going on there. So I really like these because they give me that same vacation-y vibe of a pina colada, but a little bit lighter.
The story behind the origination of this cocktail, do you mind grabbing the strainer there?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Comes from the British Virgin Islands. And the owner of Pusser's at the time had learned of this cocktail being made by the owner of a bar called the Soggy Dollar Bar. And the Soggy Dollar Bar is located on Jost Van Dyke Island, on the White Bay part. But there's no dock on Jost Van Dyke. And so the only way to get to the bar was to dive in the water and swim up, making your dollars soggy, hence the name of the bar. And he came to visit her and told her, love what you're doing. I love that you're making this cocktail that you're locally famous for in the Soggy Dollar, or in the Painkiller. And because, he had invested time and money in Pusser's and making this, beautiful representation of the British Royal Navy's famous rum, he wanted to know what was in it. And she refused him and refused him and refused him. And then one day after they'd become friends and he had been visiting time and time again, he finally got our cocktail over the surf and out to his boat and brought it home and started to essentially reverse engineer it. And he figured out a recipe that he thought was pretty close and brought it in to the bar the next day and shared it with her, and then shared it with the rest of the bar patrons, and they all actually liked his recipe a little bit more.
Oh, damn.
And that's what this recipe eventually came into. I do understand that he's always given her credit for this. Her name was Daphne Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's kind of, that's cute that despite all the trouble that she gave him about finding what this recipe was going to be, he's still giving her the credit that she's due.
Yeah.
So I just added, after the ounce of orange juice, I added an ounce of the coconut cream. And now I'm going to add an ounce of the pineapple juice. Oh, I'm sorry, 4 ounces of the pineapple juice.
4 ounces of pineapple juice.
My mistake.
For one cocktail. And normally you can make 2 cocktails in one shaker, but because this is a sizable cocktail with 4 ounces of pineapple juice, we would recommend, if you're making both of them, to make them in 2 separate shakers or make them one after another.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little full otherwise. How many rum distilleries were there in New England by the mid 1700s? 100 rum distilleries in New England in the 1700s.
How big? Yeah,
I don't even know if there's 100 distilleries in New England today. Like, I mean, there probably are, but it's like really. And at the time, the 13 colonies, the population at that time was 1.5 million. So that means there was 1 distillery for every 15,000 people. Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
Like it was like New England was a rum hotbed. Like people don't know this. Crazy.
So after the 4 ounces of pineapple juice, I just added 2 ounces of the Pusser's Blue Label. You could probably make this with the gunpowder or the 15-year, but the traditional recipe calls for the Blue Label. And then I'm going to prepare my glassware, because you always want to make sure your glassware is all set to go before you add ice and start diluting your beverage. Yeah, it's over here.
Oh, there's a Jack too?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I threw it in there. But you know what? I don't have is a toothpick. Thank you. Lovely. Our little maraschino cherries.
These are made by Filthy, I believe,
Oh,
so they are not,
not maraschino.
Yeah, they are-
Lovely.
yeah,
I just
the color
the
makes
color
them
is
look,
deceiving.
yeah. We are not fans of maraschino cherries. Maraschino cherries are for Shirley Temples. There are much better cocktail cherries out there nowadays, and actually we have look starter cherries here. We could have used one of those.
So I'm gonna make basically a flag, but with a pineapple instead of an orange, which is essentially just wrapping the pineapple around the cherry and then sticking that right through there. And put a little wedge here to put it on the side of the glass. Beautiful. And now that I got my garnish, it's time to share with you the other fun part of a true painkiller, which is crushed ice. They make these handy dandy little burlap canvas sacks that you can then fill with ice and take a mallet, smash the heck out of it. I already did that because it would make a racket.
If you want to do this at home, you can use a Ziploc bag. Maybe
Yeah.
put a towel around it though, because the plastic can get kind of holes in it. You can use a small cast iron pan or small pan to whale away at it. It's a nice way to get a little aggression out at the end of your week, to crush up some ice. And you'll see he is really kind of, it's a lot of, whenever you use crushed ice, you're really filling the glass completely with crushed ice.
And then we'll fill our shaker tin.
You guys all got this poll question right. England levying a tax on molasses. You're paying attention. You're paying
Hey, all right. Yeah, we did kind of give that one away, huh? Or wait, I did.
That's all right. That's okay. Now, Phyllis says the Soggy Dollar Beach Bar at BVI has a live webcam. I do feel like why do I know that? I feel like I've heard something about that before, that they have a live webcam there.
That's kind of funny.
Uh-huh.
All right, now I've got my garnish on my iced goblet. And I added my ice, and now you shake the heck out of it.
You'll notice when he's shaking, he's not just going like this. He's kind of moving around. And so the idea when you're shaking a cocktail is you actually really want to create chaos in there. So you don't want the ice just going from top to bottom, from top to bottom. You want it hitting the sides and pinging all around. And so using your wrists a little bit and really getting your arms in there is important for proper cocktail shaking. And you don't ever want a cocktail shake over to the side. Like feel quiet and trying to be like, don't anyone watch me. Like, you want to make a party out of it, because when people hear that noise, that's where the party is. So you want to find your cocktail shaking groove and smile and have a little dance and get into it. Have a good time.
That pitter patter of ice in the shaker tin is like the most appetizing sound out there.
Look at that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's yours first, lady. M'lady.
Cheers, everyone. I hope you made a nice little
A beautiful
cocktail
cocktail.
for yourself as well. When we turn our cameras on, we can see what's going on.
Well, since you've got a cocktail, I'll cheers you with this age 15.
Yeah. Cheers. Now I'm on vacation. And it's funny because we actually are going on vacation
That's
next
right.
week. This is perfect. Starting our vacation off. Hey, Great job. Yes, new immigrants from grain growing regions. Yes, that is the reason why rum kind of lost out in popularity. The rum shortage caused by wartime use of molasses also was a thing for sure, but that kind of happened, you know, a little bit earlier than that. The Great Molasses Flood in Boston had nothing to do with it, but I just had to squeeze that in somewhere.
They ran out of molasses.
Yeah. All right, now we're ready to go happy hour time.
Yeah, anybody that would like to just chat with us,
Yeah, get on video, have a
we'll
little.
invite you to be a panelist, and then you can turn your camera on and unmute yourself. And
Yeah, and I'm gonna invite everyone to be a panelist, and if you get invited and you don't want to turn your camera on and you just want to stay the way you are and keep listening, that's totally fine too. And if you missed the invitation,
we'll come around again.
just, you know, let me know. Just say, hey, I missed it. Can you invite me to be? Where's my, gotta find where I can do this first. Here we go.
Yeah, there was more left than I thought. Lucky me.
Sweet diggity. Okay,
Hey, compadre.
What's up, guys? Cheers, cheers.
cheers.
Oh, what am I drinking out of? My
Your little
Chardonnay.
SipScout, Glen Karen.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Love it.
Hey, Zach.
Hey there. I'm getting set up still a little bit.
No worries. Jay, did you try all three of these?
I'm gonna try after I'm done with the Gunsmoke. I'm gonna hit the 15.
Cool.
And so I'm trying to enjoy this at max. You know, I like sipping that slow, and I just let it
For
take
sure.
over, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then I'm gonna get into that 15 and really enjoy it with y'all.
Dan, I'm glad that the aged one was a little bit more to your liking.
Yeah.
Did it help to add water into the first two at all, Jen? Did you like them a little more when you did that?
Yeah, I think too, I haven't drank like straight liquor in so long that
Yeah.
it smacked me in the face a little bit, but the third one was a lot smoother. I did end up adding a little water. I also ended up adding a little Coke Zero too.
That's okay. Rum and Cokes are delicious.
They sure are.
I really like, I like Dark and Stormy as a ginger beer. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorites.
Mhm.
Rum and ginger.
I kind of feel like there's a similar story about Dark and Stormy being proprietary too.
Maybe you might be right.
I'm not sure if it's trademarked, but I do feel like there's a very strong sentiment that has to be Gosling's. Is that right?
Maybe.
Because Gosling's
You
even
might
makes
be
their
right.
own
That
ginger
does
beer
sound familiar now that you're saying that.
intended to be
Yeah.
used.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that does kind of sound familiar. Wait, do you remember your joke for Zach?
oh,
Remember last month at the SipScout party, we were like, wait, we have a rum joke for Zach, but we're not gonna tell you until next. I kind of
Right.
remember it, but I don't remember. Something like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I don't remember how it like,
yeah. No,
we're building it up too much. It's not that good. Don't get
it's not,
excited.
it's not that bad though either.
We're building it up. We're building it up. He's gonna look it up.
All right, sounds good. I'm sure it'll be worth the wait.
Mhm. How you guys doing? Have you had any fun summer vacations? Taking any summer vacations? What's everyone up to? No,
Nothing over here for us. We're being
Good.
boring.
just suffering through the humid summers of Massachusetts.
Today was actually the first nice day we've had in a while. It has rained. It feels like we were in Knoxville. Let me put it that way.
We went to a Sox game last night and sat in the rain the whole time.
Aw,
But we were the fourth
Bummer.
row away, like fourth row off of home base. So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's worse in the summer in Massachusetts. I'm like, would I rather sit in the rain or would I rather sit in the like hot, humid grossness without the rain. Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I guess it gets a little old being wet after a little while though.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
it's not for a little while, because they keep taking a break and taking a break, and you're just sitting there getting rained on,
Yeah.
and they're all inside, like, hanging out, waiting for the rain to stop.
Luckily, we didn't have any rain delays, but
Oh,
yeah,
good.
yeah. I was surprised though. It came down kind of heavy a couple times. Yeah, on the way to, oh,
Are you doing it read chat?
Yeah, so everyone, because the spelling is a pretty
Oh.
important component of it.
oh,
So if you want to spell your name that way from now on,
yes, definitely. I'll do that at like Starbucks or something. That's
Yeah.
that Kiri, like the drink. Sorry,
Yeah.
what?
yeah, like the drink.
You need to name your son that spelling of Zachary.
Yeah, you can have a junior.
Zachary
You can
Jr.
have a junior.
Oh yeah. Oh, so it's spelled the same? Technically, no, but you know, it felt like throwing the
Don't worry
junior.
about it. Explaining that to his classmates in like 8th grade.
Oh, my son, yeah, he works at Chippendales.
Oh gosh,
Horrible, horrible.
no.
That's why we didn't learn about like the Boston flood, the molasses flood and stuff, because they just like don't know how to talk to kids about
Alcohol. Yeah.
And so they're just like, yeah, the tea party.
Yeah, that's just, they like molasses a lot. They put it on their pancakes, you know?
I remember when I found out about like how big rum was in Massachusetts, and I was like, how, like I lived there my whole life. How did I not know that like rum was a Massachusetts thing? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was it was kind of like it flowed the other way with the Great Molasses Flood, because the reason that happened was a combination of, I think it was a combination of prohibition was about to drop, and they needed it as a to make something for munitions for World War I, because that was like an all artillery war, right? And that was part of it, is it was propellant or an explosive or something like that, where they were distilling down the molasses into, I think, ethanol for the weaponry instead of for
Weapons grade alcohol instead of just for consumption.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, that would be surprising.
I want to do a quick PSA because I forgot, just in case some of the others who aren't on video need to leave at some point.
Sure.
Upcoming SipScout kits. We have some
That's
exciting
right.
stuff coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Next month is Oktoberfest, which is always a really fun one because Evan and I put on our Dirndl and Lederhosen, and we don't like to be cheesy at all. That's not what we do.
No.
But that's a fun one. So there's going to be 4 different American craft beers that are Oktoberfest style beers, and some pretzels and some koozies and all sorts of stuff. So that will be kind of a fun festive one.
Yes.
And then in October, we're doing an American single malt exploration, which is so exciting because American single malt is a recent designation. It was just made in 2021, like what officially an American single malt is. And there as makers, we're starting to get into this. And so we have 6 different American single malts, and they're hard to find. There's not a lot of American single malts that have great distribution yet. They're more premium, they're more expensive. So it's hard to really get into this new kind of burgeoning, slowly growing category. So we're really, really excited. And we already have 3 of the makers locked down, and some of the makers are going to join us for that because they're excited to talk to people and really get to talk about American single malt and grow this
industry
category. Yeah. And then November is wine.
November's wine.
And then and there'll be some theme related to it. We haven't figured that out
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
Evan's on the job for
Yet
that.
to be determined.
And then in December, we'll do our holiday mixology party, which is always also very fun. We'll make 3 different holiday cocktails, and
You can
Get
batch
festive.
them and make them for your
Holiday
Christmas
parties.
parties. Yeah.
so
So-
we have some exciting stuff coming up. We're very, very excited for the future to close out this year.
Wearing the Lederhosen reminds me that you did this last year, which makes me think, has SipScout been going on for a year now?
It has
It
been.
will be,
Yeah,
yeah.
September will be a year.
September, next month.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
September was our first one, and that was the first one.
No,
October?
we didn't do Oktoberfest in September. We did it in
We
October
did
last
in
year.
October. Right.
We did Kibblestout wines for the first one.
That's right. That's right.
So
Cool.
yeah, I know, it's crazy. It's been a year.
I can't believe it's been a year.
We've had some good kits under our belt, and we're
Yeah.
we're keeping the Oktoberfest one every year, and the holiday mixology every year,
I think
because we feel like those
Those
are
are
fun,
good.
and those are just,
And we like getting to see the new Oktoberfest beers each year as more and more American, brewers are starting to make those.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
supporting that, since we really like those styles of beers and we want them to continue making them.
What kind of pretzel are you gonna put in the package?
Boy, I don't know. It's hard to beat those ones we had last year.
Yeah, we really love those.
Those are really
The
good.
Hammonds are, they're made in Pennsylvania Dutch country.
Uh-huh.
And they're hard pretzels and they're just, I don't know what it is about them. They're
Me
so
neither.
good. And I'm not
Although,
even really a hard pretzel person. I'm definitely more of a soft pretzel person.
if we
but
get ambitious, maybe we'll make soft pretzels.
make,
Ooh,
I mean,
we're gonna start hand making
guess we
things
need a
for our
commercial
SipScout
kitchen
kids.
to do
Yeah.
yeah.
but I know that you tried your hand at pretzel making, Jay. So if we get ambitious, we'll have to loop you in maybe next year.
Oh, my advice is don't do it.
Yeah, I remember the tribulation.
Hey, you asked about vacations, and one of the vacations I took nearly 10 years ago, probably even more now, was to the British Virgin Islands, where we went to the Pusser's distillery.
You did.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's funny. Tell us about it. That's cool.
So we're out and about, like sailing. We're literally sailing around the British Virgin Islands, and someone says, "Hey, like every bar that you go up to, Pusser's Rum is the rum that everyone is using to make the rum drinks." And then we find out, oh, the distillery is out here. Why don't we look it up? And so we sailed to the island that had it. And then we went to it, took just like a little tour, not an in-depth tour, had a cocktail outside the distillery. And then we went back to sailing, but it was the craziest thing. It was like a neighborhood. Like, hey, let's just go to the brewery that's over there on that island. So we sailed to the
awesome.
island. Just, yeah.
Oh, so nice.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
We're trying to get away to go to the Caribbean later this fall. I don't know if it's gonna happen this year, but we have a timeshare actually that
That's right.
we get to
Property.
bebop around and check out new places. And so he's never been to the Caribbean and I've only been once.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd like to get out there and try some rums and hang out on the beach. We'll see.
Yeah, beach vacations growing up on in the western part of the country were, Mexico or Hawaii, because you could do it in one flight.
And you
instead.
never went to Hawaii because your parents weren't.
Yeah, as an adult I did, but
Yeah.
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 But even when I was in my 20s, it just seemed like so much more of a pain to fly all the way to, Miami and then fly somewhere. When in a certain
Yeah, it's
amount of
not
time,
easy to get to
just
the
go
Caribbean
Hawaii.
from the West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the Caribbean and Hawaii are the two coastal like beach island
Yeah.
things for the different coasts,
Yeah,
for sure.
but it looks cool, and I'd like to go to some rum distilleries.
Yeah, me too. Oh,
One of the-
and if we come out to go to the Caribbean, are you guys familiar with the Big E in Western Mass?
Biggie.
I've heard of it.
Oh, no, you haven't been? You have to go.
No, what is this?
It's the Eastern States Exposition. And so it's like a huge fair and it's literally all 5 New England states participate. And like people come from internationally to go to this, like people fly in from like Europe to go to the Big E.
Can I interrupt you for just a
Yeah.
second? So she tells this story, I've heard this story, and nevertheless, not a single person that I know or that she knows that isn't from Western Mass has ever heard of it.
Not true. Not true. But the coolest thing is they have these permanent structures, these permanent buildings, like there's the Vermont building, there's the Maine building, there's the New Hampshire building. And it's like all the things that make those states the states, like the foods and the like trades and so you go to the Maine building and you get like a Maine baked potato, and you go to the Vermont building and you get apple pie with cheddar cheese melted on it. And like, and they have great music acts and it's just awesome. It's so fun. It's the best. So, but he's never been and he teases me about it all the time. So we gotta go.
Not all the time. Just enough.
If we
of
come
the
home and go to it, we'll let you know. You can drive down and meet us and we'll all go together.
Definitely.
Yeah,
We'll
definitely.
do some good drinking,
Yeah.
although probably not at the Big E. I don't know that they have
Yeah, that
good
seems,
craft stuff at a fair.
that seems more like an eating adventure,
Mhm,
which I'm okay with.
mhm.
Deep fried everything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm sure there'll be, what is it? Apple cider donut,
Yeah.
apple cider donut.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's almost time.
Apple cider donuts are the best.
that was like one of the ways we got into Massachusetts culture was by like researching online. It's like, all right, we got to go find like try all these donut places. We've been to a dozen by now in our
Mhm.
5 years up here, and all the little farm stands and stuff like that. So those are great.
It's always the farm stands that are the best ones. Like I feel
Right.
like the mass-made apple cider donuts are like they're like that. They're like that's not appley. That's not like it's just a sugar donut.
Yeah, the ones that we got at that one place,
That's helpful. Atkins Farm.
thank you.
Yeah.
Those
I
were
know what he's
like,
talking about.
those were okay.
And those are the ones I grew up with, but I agree. Going back, I was a little bit like, man, they're not quite appley enough, but whatever. Apple cider donuts with rum would be delicious.
Oh, yeah.
Delicious.
Like a rum glaze over the top.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys do hot buttered rum in the winter? Have you ever done that?
No.
No.
Man, we have a recipe on our website. It's the best hot buttered rum I've ever had. It's so basically you make like a batter and you just keep it in your freezer all season long. And then whenever you want it, you just put, 2 ounces of rum in your glass, put 2 like tablespoons of the batter in, fill it with hot water and mix it up. And you have this like creamy, delicious amazingness all winter long, especially in snowy areas. It's
The batter is essentially consists of
real healthy.
vanilla ice cream, butter. Are you moving on to the aged? Nice.
Excellent.
Vanilla ice cream, butter. Ooh. Oh, he's pouring it over ice cube.
Fancy day.
Ooh.
Cinnamon, nutmeg, and I think that's it.
Isn't there whipped cream?
Yeah. Basically the real butter beer.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
even butterier than butter.
It's so good.
Oh,
There's cream in it too.
It's so good though, and if you keep it in, you have a batch in your freezer, like, around the holidays, people just kind of show up, or like you have people over, and it's like such an easy like hosting thing to be like, who wants hot buttered rum? And you just like go in your freezer and like get them some.
Whip it
Very-
together.
yeah, it's very sneaky.
Oh no.
Mhm.
See, the other weekend I had some extra time on my hands and had found some discounted cod at the grocery store and made fish and chips from scratch. It's
Whoa.
but it's worth it. It's really good. But the problem is now she knows I can make French fries. Speaking of like whipping something out,
Yeah.
buttery, heavy stuff. And so it's like, oh no.
Oh,
It's
Oh, wait, back it up a little bit.
it's auto blur.
Oh, I see.
Sorry.
Maybe put it where your face is.
Yeah.
We're saving it for a moment, but
We'll work on it, but yeah.
That's a feat. Well done,
dude,
sir.
fish and chips is.
Oh, thank you.
and
Well
homemade
done.
coleslaw too.
Oh.
And the tart.
Did you
had
like
toast
deep
as well.
fry or air
Yes.
fry or what was the?
Dutch oven with peanut oil. Drop those suckers in. All credit goes to Jay Kenji Lopez Alt and Serious Eats, because that's where I got pretty much all the recipe.
Yeah.
Lovely place.
Are you familiar with the existence of malt vinegar powder?
I've heard of vinegar powder. I had not heard of malt vinegar powder.
So it is fantastic with fish and chips because it doesn't get everything soggy. You can just have everything
that's
stay nice and crispy.
awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, beautiful. Look at that crisp on that fish.
Yeah, well done.
Wow.
you.
Yum.
But yeah, I have a feeling if we went to, got hot buttered rum, it would be about the same. Like, oh, now we know we can do this thing. And this is dangerous knowledge to have.
Yeah, you definitely have to put it in the back of your freezer where you kind of forget about it. And then every once in a while you're watching a movie and you're like, oh yeah, I have hot buttered rum stuff.
Oh gosh.
It's it lasts all winter, so it's perfect. I don't have as much of an excuse here in Arizona, but when it's snowing.
Right. We don't believe her.
One of the things that has happened since I started living in San Francisco, I don't live there anymore, but rum and rum bars became a thing.
For sure.
And it was amazing that by the end of my tenure there were a good handful of rum bars that were making some of the most delicious rum cocktails that you could find in the world.
Yeah.
And when I got back from that that British Virgin Islands trip, Smuggler's Cove. I went to Smuggler's Cove with brand new eyes, and Zach, what Smuggler's Cove had done, and I didn't really know it, is they took a signature drink from the Caribbean and they made it there at that bar by professional mixologists. And so I would have a painkiller. I was drinking painkillers in the British Virgin Islands like there was no tomorrow. And then I went to San Francisco and I went to Smuggler's Cove, and they did it with such precision and artistry. I was like, this is a brand new painkiller.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And then I looked up all their drinks, and it's like, yeah, that's the drink from Trinidad. That's the drink from Jamaica. That's
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
really impressive when they can take something that like already exists and just dial it to 11, and you're like, it's like unlocking a new level. You're like, this is a new thing almost.
yeah. But it was a hidden luxury that I didn't even know that I was privy to when I would go to that bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't realize what you have till you miss it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The bar itself too was basically invisible from the outside.
Yeah, that's one of those places you just walk right by and you don't even realize like the coolest thing ever is in there.
The only indication that there was something there was a green light and a red light indicating port and starboard.
Ah,
ship. And then when you go inside, you enter the ship on the main deck, and then there's like an eagle's nest, and then you go down underneath into the hold of the ship.
No,
And so the whole thing felt like a ship in the 3 stories that it
yeah,
had.
very cool.
Really
wow.
cool.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about San Francisco rum bars is they're all thematically tiki bars.
Mhm.
Huh.
Mm, okay.
And Evan, I don't know if you went to Last Rites. Did you ever go there?
I did. That
Yeah,
was
we have
down
black rights.
like in the Castro area, right? Castro to Ghost Triangle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those places that are trying to compete with all the other rum bars that are
No.
thematically tiki. I love the rum wars that happen in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Well, and Trader Sam's on Clement is one of the oldest, it is the oldest tiki bar in the
I
country,
believe so.
actually. It was like in the 50s that they opened, and it's still there and operational, and so you can go to Trader Sam's and it feels like it's been there since the 50s. The
Smells like it's been there since the
The
50s.
floors are sticky, there's history on the walls, like, but they make great cocktails, and they really were part of the bringing the tiki culture into the United States movement.
What was the one in the Fide Eye that when it opened at 5 o'clock, just the front part, which was again themed like you were in a boat,
Yeah.
in a ship, in the hold of the ship, to the point that they even had like portholes that
And you
you'd
could,
see,
like, look
and,
through.
like, and then there would be like either, I can't remember if it was actual aquariums or just a TV screen with an aquarium,
It was TV screen.
and then they would set sail, and for the first half an hour or hour, that was the only part that was open, and then they would arrive at the destination at the island, and then they'd open the back part, and you'd walk back there, and there'd be like thatched hut, like roofs, and like twinkling stars in the sky, and like little sand, like
Oh,
And
wow.
it sounds really cheesy, but it was done really well. Like it was, yeah. Yeah, they do
over
have,
the top.
they do have a lot of great kind of tiki style bars in San Francisco,
Yeah.
surprisingly, because that's not what you would think of in San Francisco.
But I do feel like it kind of came around with the sailors coming back from the, the Pacific Arena in World War II and having become familiarized with like and appreciating like island culture,
Yeah,
at
sure.
least in like Southeast Asia, or maybe it was more around the return from people from Vietnam.
Yeah,
Because a lot of them, of course, came in and out of the country through San Francisco.
oh, we lost Phyllis. I wish Phyllis would have come on because she has all this like deep knowledge of like these bars and these people. And I'm just like, wait, what? What are you, who?
Nelson, what?
No, like both of the cocktails she's brought up tonight. I'm like, I've never heard of them.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I'll try that one too.
I live in this building that's 100 years old, and we have a whole bunch of historic pictures in the hallways and stuff. And one of the pictures shows the 1960s tiki bar that used to be at the corner of this building.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
wow. Did we mention? Oh, we did. It was in the poll, the Black Tot Day. Because
Yeah, we didn't quite
that was
finish
the
the
end
poll.
of last.
We didn't quite
end of
finish the
last
poll,
month.
so I don't think we did.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
was too slow on
for
the
your
poll.
edification, Black Tot Day is a day that marked the end of the 300+ year history of the tot rations to the sailors. A day that was a sad day for many sailors.
I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, they
But
all.
that was
poured
just
one
the
out
end
for
of,
It was 1970,
but it was just at the end of last month.
July 31st, yeah. Yeah, but so from the 1600s until 1970, they maybe always got a ration of rum every single day. Isn't that crazy?
So nuts.
You imagine like the withdrawals coming. I mean, like it's low level, but still, like get out of the Navy. It's like, oh no.
Oh no.
Well, and
Run.
one of the reasons they say they ended it actually was like the advancements in warfare and what sailors have to do. Like you actually need your brain to be more sharp rather than just like your arms and your body to be like
your
able to
courage.
lift things and your courage.
Yeah.
Like, you're like pushing buttons and actually thinking and looking at screens and do it. So they were like, we need their brains to be a little more sharp. We can't be giving them booze.
They don't have to haul up the anchor anymore. They just
Yeah,
hit the winch.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just assumed that they were all alcoholics and the daily ration was just to get them at normal.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You know, the more you all talk about this and just how involved it was, I think back to like when Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie first came out, right? Everyone, where's all the rum gone? You know, everybody was throwing that around as like a funny joke and stuff. And it's like, no, that like really was a big deal, a concern, a problem.
Right. Because if everybody was going through withdrawals from a pint of rum every day,
Yeah.
How much the pot was?
no, it was a half pint. But that's
Still,
still,
that's
that's
a lot. Of rum.
Still,
That's a lot.
8 ounces of rum. And most people were just like,
yeah.
I mean, that would be like one more of these, drinking all of these
yeah,
every day,
and just throwing it back.
or 2 of the big ones, I guess.
Yeah,
That's
just
a lot.
all at once.
That's a lot. Like imagine drinking 2 of these
In
every
like,
day.
in like 2 swallows. Like gulp, gulp, gulp.
I mean, I don't think they all did that.
No, of course they didn't all do that, but
Oh gosh.
Mm-mm.
it's like, oh,
I'm just like, I'm an ICU nurse, so I'm just trying to think of that and do my job.
Yeah,
oh,
really.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
really, any
Doing
job,
anything-
imagine any job that like part of your job is you get some booze.
Right.
I mean, I
Yeah.
guess my job is. But what is different?
I mean, if I got to walk out of the hospital and they gave me like some rum and I was leaving, I would be like, yeah, this is a great deal. Like,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, at the end of your day, yeah. for
And then you
sure.
can just hook up the IV yourself
Yeah.
Rehydrate for tomorrow.
in the morning and be like, okay, I'm ready to go again.
Yeah.
You know, you had talked about vacations and like vacations surrounding booze and stuff. And one of the things that I did over the last month is I went to the Grand Tetons and I went to Glacier National Park. And while I was out there, I was going to drink as the Romans do. And I got a bottle of Yellowstone whiskey, and never had Yellowstone before. And it's a cheap whiskey. However, value for taste is pretty good in my
Oh,
opinion.
yeah?
Yeah.
I haven't had it.
I haven't either.
I recommend it. I mean, it's $45 or something like that. And so you're not going to make a mistake.
Right.
But as far as, my collection goes, I was like, this is a pretty good dollar for taste whiskey. And so we were around the campfire passing around, a nice little metal cup of Yellowstone whiskey and sipping that around. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we're going next week. We are going with some friends. They have a houseboat on Lake Powell.
Mhm.
And so we're going to be on a houseboat for 7 days with family friends of his who he like kind of grew up with, and their
Yep.
parents are like kind of like second parents to him. And so we'll have 0 service for 7 days and just bring in everything with us that we need, and it's gonna be
Living
fun.
off the land.
It's gonna be fun. Yeah.
So one of the funny stories from my British Virgin Islands story that I had told earlier
Uh-huh.
is that for, I don't know, 10 days or something, I didn't wear shoes because we were on the boat. We were going to islands, doing all
Sure.
this. And so you put on some flippy floppies. I was never had my foot in a shoe.
Closed.
And so after 10 days of being out there out in the water, I get back to the land and I go to put on my shoes and I can't because my feet had swelled in size because I didn't have a shoe constantly compressing my foot
Compressing them.
or whatever I was doing as I was going out there and, going on the beach and stuff. And so my foot had gotten bigger. And so, Evan, while you're on vacation, I dare you to not put on shoes
Oh, you won't.
and see if after 10 days your foot had gotten bigger.
I think that the salt water probably played a role in
Oh,
that.
probably the salt, maybe.
But I accept your challenge.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine we'll put any shoes on while we're living on a boat. I
Yeah.
can't imagine we will. But the funny thing is so we're gonna live on the boat for those 7 days, and then as soon as we get off the boat, we're driving to Vegas because I'm speaking at a conference and he's coming to the conference with me, a distilling conference. And so we're gonna have to, I'm gonna immediately have to go from that to heels and proper business attire. So it's gonna be a hard transition. It's gonna be a little much. So if my feet swell, that's gonna be problematic.
Be in big trouble.
It's gonna be
I
really
guess you have to
problematic.
go shoe shopping in Vegas.
That's right. That's right. We'll see. We'll report back. We'll let you know how it goes. Oh, we are. Oh, listen to this. Speaking of rum.
Oh, yeah.
So also our 6-year anniversary is while we're in Vegas. And so there's this distillery called Lost Spirits Distillery. They started in LA. They had this honestly, I've been following them for a long time. It was almost looked like mini golf gone wild, distillery style, just very themed, very it's experiential, but it kind of looked a little cheesy, honestly. But so they were doing that in LA for a while, and it's a rum distillery. And during the pandemic, apparently they closed that down and they opened a new distillery in Vegas. But I don't know where the heck they're getting their money from. I can't wait to figure all this out. But so they've opened this distillery in Vegas that is walking space wise as big as a football field. And it has a Cirque du Soleil show that's part of the experience, but it's a walk through Cirque du Soleil show. So there's things going on in all the corners and there's acrobats and everything. And you're tasting rum as you're going through. There's a lounge with music, but then you can also buy this 16-course tasting pairing menu where some of the courses actually have rum in them. And they have on their website, they're we cannot make this non-alcoholic. There is rum in the food. This whole, and it's 20,000 leagues under the sea is the theme of it. And it's blowing my mind that we're going to this. You're showing it?
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
Yeah,
Oh.
so look at this.
What?
Oh my gosh.
And it's only 16 people per seating.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is.
That's it.
Oh, this dish right here, this plate, apparently, you pick it up and you kiss the dish to get the uni into your mouth. They don't give you any utensils or anything.
You have
And
to
just
tongue it.
make out with the dish to get the uni in your mouth.
That is some high concept stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Anyway,
who are these people at this? Yeah, I can't.
bonkers.
Oh,
Yeah,
my-
we're pretty freaking excited. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean,
Well,
I guess Vegas is where this should be.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Yeah,
Where else would it be, honestly?
yeah.
Maybe Singapore or no, because that's they don't like sin.
I don't love the booze.
Well, yeah, and
No.
people would leave there and all get arrested.
I don't know.
Bangkok, that's where it should be.
But I'm excited because there's a show afterwards too. It's so it's gonna, yeah, I'm fascinated to see how this all turns out.
Oh, my
Well,
God.
We'll report back.
Yeah, that's one of our experiences while we're in Vegas besides the conference.
Yeah, after watching season 2 of The Bear, that place looks like a place to really enjoy.
Oh.
Ooh.
I love
Watching the
the
food.
Bear, isn't the bear so good? But it's so awful too because you're just so stressed the whole time you're watching it. We're like, why are we watching this? This is so stressful.
We've been wanting to make that omelet in the last episode of the last season.
Oh, yeah.
With
with
the
it.
chips on top.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Apparently the actress made the consulting chef helped her, taught her, but during the shoot, the actress actually made that dish.
Very
Interesting.
cool.
Oh,
That's
and
a
she's
cool
from
little
Dorchester too.
Oh, she is. That's fun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The one who plays, what's her name is Bianca?
For
No.
the actress's
The
name?
actress, I think. Bianca,
I have no idea.
you know,
I don't even know the
Edebiri.
character's name.
I don't remember. That was such a great show.
It is a great show.
Yeah. And what's his face lives on a boat while he's getting his training.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. In Copenhagen, right?
Oh,
The invisible cat.
The invisible cat, yeah.
So great. Did you guys see the movie? What's the movie?
The Menu.
The Menu.
oh,
Heard
I
about
want to
it.
watch it, but I don't like scary movies.
I'm not the
It's-
biggest fan of scary movies either. It's more suspense, I'd say, than
Yeah, there's some shock value to it for sure, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't say.
it's not like a horror movie at all.
Yeah,
Is it like
But there's-
jumpy, like some stuff
There's
jumps
a-
out?
there's a couple of things that
A little
are,
bit.
that's the shock value, but it's
Mm.
not like jumping out at you. It's just like, you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So like that.
It's about craft food and it treats the audience as if they eat craft food. Not
Mm.
craft mac and cheese, but artistry food.
Right. Highfalutin.
Yeah, like definitely have to be familiar with the like creepy kind of menus and like that vibe in that world a little bit to, you know.
Did you hear about the scam pulled a few years ago about it was a restaurant that was #1 in London that never served a single item of food. Yeah, you've seen that? And he just like went as ridiculous as he could. So for anybody who hasn't heard of it, right?
I
This
haven't.
guy was like, Yelp is BS and I'm gonna prove it. And he opened a restaurant on Yelp and then set up a phone line and everything. And when people would call, he'd just be like, I'm sorry, we're already booked for months and months and months. And had a few like people write fake reviews. And all of a sudden it was like called The Shed. And it was a picture of his literal shed in his backyard.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Reviews, eventually there was enough 5-star reviews that were like completely fabricated of other people that pretended they had been there essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
For prestige, I think. Yeah.
Right. And it
So
became the
weird.
#1 restaurant in London.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Should
He-
we
he-
pay some people to read the scout?
I think one of the things he did just to make it extra ridiculous is he did hire like he had one food critic come in and hired all these extras to be like other diners and stuff like that and servers.
Elaborate.
And the server would come up and be like, speaking of like crazy menus, this is kind of how I connected the two. He'd come up and the server would be like, so we don't actually have a menu. What we do is I will ask you a few questions, get your general aura and vibe, and I will recommend our dishes based on emotion and what you're feeling. Yeah, totally.
Super pretentious.
It's like
Yeah.
the
Totally Cren.
no, it's like the Have a Nice Day Cafe or whatever it's called. Anyways, yeah, that's amazing.
There's a spot in San Francisco that actually does serve food, but their menu is literally a poem.
It is a poem.
Oh,
It's
All
literally
right.
a poem. And it's like, so you have no idea what the actual food is or what and then it comes out
It's
and
just obscure
and
random
then like,
language.
it comes out and it's like a bonsai tree with like things underneath it that look like mushrooms, but they're actually some other food that's turned into like, and you just eat it and you're like, so what was that? Like what? Like
yeah.
it was one of those like
It's a
Michelin.
deer with no eyes.
Yeah, it was one of those like Michelin star places that like when I like, I mean, it
No
was
idea.
beautiful, it was delicious, but then I left and I was like, so are we going to get pizza? Or like, what are we doing here?
Go for a cheeseburger.
Because like, that was wonderful and that was an experience, but I'm still like hungry like, for like
Yeah.
actual food.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
Good old
We-
San Francisco.
We went to Sierra Nevada a few years back in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. I haven't been to that new facility.
It's wonderful. We call it the
Yeah.
Disneyland
Beer Disney
Beer.
World.
Yeah. But they definitely, it's not quite as highfalutin or anything, of course. It's still Asheville, North Carolina, but it was definitely like little plates and like a bite of this and a bite of that.
And so like you've been drinking and you're like, I'm so hungry. I'm gonna eat everything. And we ordered you're still in college too. And so we
Oh,
ordered
yeah.
some food there. And like, we're like we paid the check and barely made the tip and all this stuff and we leave. And then we like went to a Wendy's across the street and just like got all this stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, I thought I was ordering a Philly cheesesteak and it was like this big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
seems strange to me for Sierra Nevada. I wouldn't expect that at like a brewery. Like that's a weird choice.
I mean, they have like truffle, it was like truffle fries with like this, I don't
They
know.
leaned into farm to table very hard. I
Yeah.
remember they were bragging pretty hard, and it was very good about this local strain of rice that at one point was thought lost.
Oh, the Carolina
The
Gold.
Carolina Gold rice and this and that and the other, all that sort of stuff. And then they give you like a quarter cup of this rice.
I mean, everything was very delicious. It's just when you've been
Want
drinking,
more of it.
you
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting. Have you guys been to Toro in Boston? Papa's
Is
place?
that-
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We love
Yeah.
that place.
I
Yeah.
love that place. I don't know why that made me think of it because they're not pretentious or anything.
But small plates.
Yeah, small place, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that the place you tried to take me when we were there?
I think so. Maybe.
Mm-mm.
No, that place is great. Yeah.
There's a place not far away from it now, opened called Ilona, and it's Georgian, as in the country, not the state.
Oh, yeah.
It's really good. It's it's similar in that like a lot of it is small plates,
Sure.
but with a very different bent.
Yeah, we've only had Georgian. I mean, that was my first time having Georgian food
Me
here
too.
too.
Yep.
We flew into New York City, and our cabbie who drove us into our hotel, it was like 9:30 at night. We had just gotten, we were starving, but we were like, all right, it's New York, like things are open, like we have to be able to get food. And so we were in the backseat, like brainstorming and looking at our maps and trying to figure out where we were gonna go. And our cabbie all of a sudden like piped up, and he was
I think
just
we
like,
could have asked him, but either way.
I don't think so. I think he was just like, do you guys like all types of food? And like, we were like, yeah, sure. And he was like, there's this great Georgian place, like right near your hotel. And we were like, oh, really? Like, we've never had Georgian food. What's that like? And he's like, actually, I'm from Georgia. And so he started to tell us about like his culture and his he was really excited to share it with us. And
Did you have the bread thing with the cheese in it and then the eggs that they
mixed in.
swirled into it?
I did, and they called it a cheese boat.
That sounds right.
That would sell it.
Mm.
That we would have bought it if we were only speaking English and didn't have a fancy language next to it. But man, that was good.
Everything that I found like the Georgian food to be so good. We were so impressed.
Mhm.
I was like, why isn't this a thing? Why don't people talk about Georgian food more? Like, it's really quite delicious.
The Irish food.
And it was one of those places that we got there and they were like, oh, we're closing in a half an hour. And there was a little like, oh shit, they're going to be like rushing us out the door. But once they saw how much we were like enjoying the food and ordering all this wine and like really getting into it, they were like, all right, like, let's do this with these people.
Pile it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We ingratiated ourselves as we do with all of our food and booze enthusiasm.
Have you guys discovered a way to sort of crush ice that's, you guys were like actually crushing it, but is there a nice way to make, say, it sort of like a chipped ice in a different way? I've got a Ninja, and sometimes I'll put some ice cubes in a Ninja and I'll make a daiquiri.
Sure.
And it's just like, but it's very, very, very icy.
Yeah. It's more like slushy rather than,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel like I mess around with crushed ice too much. And since we have this handy little burlap sack thing,
and I kind of like whacking it like a whack-a-mole and like
yeah.
getting a little aggression out. So I don't know. I do think they sell silicone ice things that are really tiny ones that like then you can pop out and it's kind of like crushed ice because they're so small, but yeah,
Rolling pin. Maybe there's an attachment for the Cuisinart
the
KitchenAid.
I'm just so worried about in my apartment, just like whacking at
Right.
ice at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m.
Just make sure you have a good wood cutting board underneath it and put a kitchen towel underneath. Yeah, you're fine. Good.
Hi,
All good.
Trying to make a rum drink.
Yeah.
back off, neighbors.
Yeah, I don't feel like-
Officer, it's a delicious cocktail.
I don't feel like all that many cocktails call for crushed ice. That's why we don't really
Yeah.
have a good solution for it, because there's a few, but
Yeah, I mean, other than this one and like,
like smashes.
and maybe like, what is it? The
Mint juleps, yeah.
julep, thank you.
Uh-huh.
That was the one I was trying to.
Mules, Moscow mules, is that the crushed
I
ice?
feel like those are often served with crushed ice, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And is the reason that the crushed ice doesn't melt, because, you know, we're always talking about bigger ice cubes are better, they melt more slowly, but is the reason why it doesn't melt is because there's so much of this crushed ice in it that it almost
It
creates
keeps
like
it
a block?
so cold. It cools the drink down and keeps it as cold as it was
No.
very effectively.
Are you making our second painkiller?
Yeah, because there wasn't enough room in there for the first one.
So Evan, I don't know if you remember this, but bunch of years ago, I took a pineapple and I jigsawed the top of it off and I kept the husk. And then I put that husk in the refrigerator and I used it as a cup. And what I had found is that coconut was the best insulator of cold I've ever had. Better than any of the, you know, metal cups that you could buy.
Wait,
better-
coconut or pineapple?
Coconut.
Oh, I think you said pineapple at
Oh,
first.
did I say, I meant,
Okay,
I
I'm
meant
tracking now, I'm tracking.
I meant coconut. And
Okay.
it's just like the coconut had the right sort of like moisture to pulp where it held the moisture and it just, I couldn't put beer in it. It was so cold because it would frost over.
No,
Oh, yes. Oh, 100%.
wait,
And
was there still meat in the coconut or was
Yes.
it?
Yeah, there was still pulp. There, it was completely natural coconut. And so
Wow.
I give it a go. Just jigsaw the top off, get all that gook off, put it in the freeze, put a beer in it, regret that, and then put some hard alcohol in it.
Interesting. Next,
Jay, have you ever heard of Pykrete?
No, what's that, man?
Pykrete was this crazy idea where they took wood pulp or other products like that, made a slurry with water and froze it. And somebody had the bright idea in World War II that they were going to make a ship out of it. And it was the idea was it's this combination of wood fibers overlapping in water and ice. And the North Atlantic's already so cold. And I wonder if the coconut is very similar in that it's very pulpy, very fibrous, but with a lot of water. And one of the reason the crazy idea got as far as it did is, and this is a true story, I've looked it up, this is not some like apocryphal thing. They brought a chunk of it into a room with all these like generals and admirals and stuff like that, pulled out a revolver and shot it, and the ricochet, like they forgot about the ricochet and it pinged around the room, hit someone relatively harmlessly, thank God, but like barely made a dent in this stuff. And it would have stayed frozen even in, you know, in the North Atlantic just fine. There's a Mythbusters episode where they replicate it and actually make a boat that they go around in for a while in something
Man.
similar.
that's wild.
Holy cow.
It's pretty neat.
That's wild.
Crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
maybe that's what's it. We need to make some sort of like wood pulpy slurry, put it in some sort of fancy cup as the insulator, and you can sell that at your restaurant bar.
There we
Yeah,
go.
there we go.
Maybe that's what the Nautilus in Captain Nemo's ship in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was made out of.
Hey,
We'll find out here. Yeah, I think it is.
We're just realizing Evan forgot the nutmeg garnish on the painkiller earlier, and it's a very critical component because the aroma while you're drinking, it really sets it apart. So sorry if you didn't put your nutmeg on your painkiller.
Put your nutmeg on your next painkiller.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we think we're gonna do the audiobook for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea while we're on vacation
Just on the drive up, because
For
the
the-
book's
to
only like
prepare for our
200
dinner.
pages long.
mm,
Because it's been a long time.
I've never read it.
Did you see the terrible movie made by Disney
No.
from the 1950s?
Nope.
Hey, speaking of books made into series or movies, did you watch Wool or Silo.
Milo,
We're currently watching Silo.
It's so
Good.
good.
It's so good. I never read the book. I don't like, that's not my genre. Like, I don't care about that shit at all. And I'm more with him. I'm like, when are we watching Silo again? Come on, we gotta watch Silo. Like, it's so good. Yeah. Speaking of, we have to watch Silo today. I'm not done with it yet.
Yeah, we have to finish that before we
Before we
go on
go,
the boat
yeah,
because
yeah.
I
Oh
don't
my-
know what we're gonna do otherwise.
Did you
Oh,
read the
yeah.
book, Jay?
Yeah, I did the audiobook when I moved out here to Seattle. And then whatever, that a few years go by and now they have the Silo series. And we watched it and then we got up to the point where we had to watch it every week because it was being released every week.
Sure.
And we got to episode 9, I guess. And like me and the guy I was watching it with, we were just so disappointed because we were like, oh, they're not going to wrap up the story. And then we realized that there was another final episode. And then we were like, oh, okay. So we were mad. And then we were so happy, like all within the span of 10 minutes.
It is hard when you think like you have more to go and then you realize you're near the end or vice versa. That's a challenging situation for sure.
So something kind of fun, I don't know if you guys know this about Silo and that novel series. The novels Wool and
Rust.
and Shift were not released as novels. They were released as blog posts for free. Hugh Howey just posted blogs of like chapter after chapter after chapter whenever he was finished with them. And maybe he released like 3 chapters in a row, or maybe it was just one. But that's how the books were written and published. He self-published them on like WordPress.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's insane.
so wild.
I think Andy Weir for The Martian did something similar. And one of the reasons why The Martian is so accurate, or at least plausible, is because he would like release a chapter and then like he would have, if not real rocket scientists, at least amateur rocket scientists reading it and be like, dude, you know, you're close, but like you need to change this or that or the other. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't know other people did that too, though. That's awesome. And that's a whole series. That's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah, that was,
He didn't even get to a point where it was so popular where he was like, all right, I can make some money off this.
no, yeah, eventually he did.
Okay.
Sold the rights to it, got it published for real, pulled it off the internet, and then started making money off of it.
Got it.
But initially, like, he had proof positive numbers to the publishers, like, people like this.
Yeah.
And with a little bit of money behind it, we can both make money. And now they're both making a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Apple.
Yeah, it is quite good.
I'm so excited for the next season. Like, it's a fascinating beginning, and then it just goes, and then it goes.
See, I feel
Yeah.
like the whole season I've been like, wait, we're already like, I feel like it's moving very fast. And I'm like, I feel like they could have
Uh-huh.
stretched all of these storylines out so much further. So I'm
Yeah.
interested to see where it goes because I feel like they're moving very fast for storylines.
Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that in the book, the elevator, by the time the story is happening, the elevators are broken. And so they have to rely on the stairs and the couriers to get stuff going.
There aren't any elevators right now on the show, right?
Right.
Not, and that's the presentation that I think you're asking about. And I'm, now that you say that, like when that was mentioned in the show, part of me paused and I was like, were there never any elevators? Or were they just like
Taken off
disallowed at some point or taken offline or maybe actually literally broke? And I can't confirm or deny.
Because I remember in the world building, you know, they're in the silo and the silo's been around for what is presumed to be maybe 100 years, maybe more. And
Sure.
so they're living in a world of hand-me-downs
Right.
and breaking down. And so you see that in the show, she has to sort of like fix the engine.
Recycling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And the recycling, and you not really know like how many generations of people had worn the clothes and stuff. And I could have swore that in the book, they have to use the stairs just because the elevators were worn out. And so like life has sort of like evolved around using the stairs.
I mean, that kind of rings true, but I cannot recall if they took them offline as a measure of control, they broke, or they never existed. But I do kind of think it would be really weird to build something like that
And not build elevators.
when you had the technology to drill something down like that. You obviously had the technology to build an elevator.
But I definitely don't think they've made any indication in the show of like there used to be elevators.
Right.
They've just kind of made
Right.
an indication of like it's stairs.
Right.
Yeah.
I really enjoy world building, especially sci-fi world building. And that was one of those things that I remember from the books that I really enjoyed, was just the idea that you've cultivated a culture around hand-me-downs and a broken society of things that used to work.
It's kind of a YA book, but it has really good world building. There's a book called The Captain's Daughter. It's written by Peter F. Hamilton, who's I think written some of the best sci-fi in the last 20 years. And it's about I guess basically a Noah's Ark, an Ark ship going off to find a new planet because the Earth is broken. And the world that you're presented and are introduced to going on inside the Ark ship is fascinating. It has some similar like elements to Silo and this idea of like hand-me-downs and you can't make more, etc. Yeah, The Captain's Daughter.
There you're gonna tell them about our glitter sci-fi book.
Oh.
So bad,
It's not bad, it's just
pretty bad.
not as good.
I feel like Evan tried to get me into like a sci-fi audiobook and he picked
It wasn't, I hadn't read it before, so I didn't know if it was gonna work or
What's
not.
it called?
The Battle of the Linguist Mages.
But it's all like sparkle dungeons and like glitter dragons. And I'm just like, what do you like? Because I'm a woman, I need like sparkle and glitter. Like, what is this?
I didn't pick it based on that.
I know. But it's kind of ridiculous. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
All right, I've got a rooftop party that I have to go to because a
Oh,
neighbor
fancy.
is a military surgeon is moving to Georgia because they need him over there. And so
Wait, Georgia the country or?
Georgia the state.
Okay. That would have been very coincidental.
So I'm gonna go up on the roof and have some rum.
Excellent.
All right.
Yeah, we're gonna
Share the
go
rum
make some dinner.
and watch
So,
Silo.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
enjoy.
Thank you for joining, guys. We hope to see you next month for Oktoberfest.
All right, yeah. of
As
course.
always.
Bye.
See you guys.